Good evening. Welcome to tonight's scary bedtime story to help you fall asleep. Please comment below and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. This all happened not long after my roommate Leo and I moved into a cramped apartment in Westport, one of those places that feels more like a walk-in closet than a home. There were boxes everywhere, the floor creaked like an old rocking chair whenever we shifted our weight, and the living room window looked out onto an alley filled with garbage cans and broken pallets. But hey, it was ours. The problem was the lighting. Our new shoebox had no overhead fixtures. None. At night, the corners disappeared in inky blackness, and the single floor lamp we inherited from a friend was so dim it barely illuminated the space around the couch. I work night shifts at a copy shop, which means I'm usually wide awake when the rest of the city's winding down. If I wanted to read, pay bills, or even find my socks without fumbling, I needed something bright that wouldn't cost half my paycheck. Given that minimum wage doesn't stretch far in Westport, I turned to the one place everyone goes when they're broke and desperate: Craigslist. I spent hours scrolling through listings for lamps. Most were ugly brass antiques or dented plastic monstrosities from the 70s. Then I found it. A sleek, modern lamp that looked like it came straight from a designer showroom. The photo showed a smooth metal neck, a subdued golden glow, and a marble base that seemed solid enough to take a hit from a sledgehammer. Whoever owned it had paid real money once, but the listing price was a mere $20. The seller's username was just a random string of letters and numbers. No ratings, no biography, nothing. Leo glanced at the ad over my shoulder, scratched his chin, and shot me a look that screamed, "We might get murdered." I shrugged. We'd both just paid rent, and desperation can make a bad idea look like a solid plan. The seller insisted on meeting in Harborside near the old shipyard. It was a late afternoon in early spring when I drove over, the sky tinged gray by the promise of rain. My GPS took me past crumbling warehouses and lots strewn with rusted scraps. The air had a tang of burned rubber and something else, maybe industrial chemicals or stale river water. I didn't see a single soul on the streets except for a stray dog sniffing around a garbage bag as though hoping to find dinner. A pack of crows flapped overhead, calling like they knew something I didn't. Finally, I arrived at the address, a decrepit brick building, 3 stories tall, with a faded sign that read, "Summit Tool and Die." The letters were peeling off, and the windows on the upper levels were cracked or boarded up. Honestly, the place looked abandoned. The front door led into a dimly lit lobby. I turned on the flashlight on my phone, swallowing hard. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing in the emptiness. "I'm here for the lamp." No answer. For a moment, I considered leaving. $20 or not, the whole setup screamed danger. But then I heard footsteps on the stairs. A figure in a gray hoodie materialized above me, his face shadowed in the flickering overhead light. He didn't smile. He just nodded and jerked his head in the direction of a hallway, as if to say, "Follow me." My heart hammered like it was trying to escape my chest, but I followed. My sneakers crunched on bits of broken glass that glittered under the phone's glare. He led me to what looked like a supply closet filled with random junk and a metal shelving unit covered in dusty boxes. And there, just as promised, stood the lamp. I remember feeling a wave of relief. It was identical to the Craigslist photos. Sleek, modern, flawless. The kind of lamp that usually costs a couple $100, easy. I pulled out my wallet, forcing a laugh that sounded more nervous than casual. "Are you sure $20 okay? This lamp must be worth a lot more." Before I could finish, I heard a harsh clang. The world went sideways. My mind blanked. Then I felt a sharp, dizzying impact on my temple, and everything dissolved into blackness. Coming to was like swimming upward through thick ink. My head throbbed, and a nauseating wave of pain pulsed behind my eyes. The floor beneath me felt rough and cold, like unfinished concrete. Somewhere nearby, two voices argued in hushed, urgent tones. "The wallet's empty. Check his phone." That jolted me awake. My phone. My wallet. Gone. I tried to stir, but my limbs felt like they were made of lead. Before I could do anything, there was a sudden commotion from outside the room. "CPD! Hands where I can see them!" The voices near me erupted in curses. Then came a rush of footsteps, grunts, and bodies slamming against walls. A bright flashlight cut through the darkness, landing on my face. I squinted. A cop knelt, and her voice was surprisingly gentle as she told me, "You're okay. We've got an ambulance on the way." They took me to the hospital, where I discovered that the men who'd attacked me were part of a robbery scam. They used fake Craigslist ads to lure in buyers, then stole whatever they could: money, credit cards, phones. Sometimes they'd resell the goods. Sometimes they'd vanish entirely. The police had been surveilling the area after getting a tip about similar incidents in Ridgemont. The timing was sheer luck. If the cops hadn't shown up, who knows what might have happened. An officer visited me while I was lying in a curtained-off ER bed, an ice pack pressed to my temple. He returned my wallet and phone, explaining they'd been found on one of the suspects. Then he handed me a plastic evidence bag, and inside it was the lamp. "We're holding on to it for a bit, but once we clear it, you can take it," he said, almost apologetically. "Might as well get something out of this mess, right?" A few days later, bruised and bandaged, I hobbled back into our Westport apartment. Leo, predictably, pounced on the lamp like a cat on a favorite toy. "Dude, we are keeping this. It's practically a trophy," he said, turning it on to check the glow. "And free lighting. Best Craigslist deal ever." The lamp worked perfectly, casting a warm, comfortable light that made our dingy living room feel downright cozy. I would have been thrilled if not for the nagging memory of the attack. Every time I looked at it, I remembered the warehouse, the hoodie guy, the flash of pain. That golden glow now seemed less like a bargain and more like a warning about things that seemed too good to be true. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. $20 and a concussion for a nice lamp with a dark story behind it. But when the nights get long and the shadows creep in from the corners, I still turn it on. Because in Westport, good lighting is hard to find, even if it comes with its own ghost story. This happened last summer. My two friends Dylan and Chris and I decided to do a 3-night camping trip in a state park a few hours from where we live. It wasn't one of those family-friendly campgrounds with paved lots and bathrooms. This was deep woods, primitive sites. No cell signal, just a fire ring and whatever you brought with you. The first night was exactly what you'd expect. We got there late afternoon, set up our tents, gathered some firewood, and just chilled. Typical camping stuff. Nothing weird. The second day was more of the same. We hiked, fished a little, explored around. There was no one else out there, at least as far as we could tell. That was part of the appeal. Just us and miles of woods. But that night, something felt off. We were sitting around the fire again, not even late, maybe 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Dylan was mid-sentence when Chris suddenly stopped him and said, "Did you hear that?" We all went quiet. At first, I didn't hear anything. Then, faintly, there was this snapping sound, like someone stepping on a branch. Not uncommon in the woods, obviously, but it didn't fit. The rhythm was wrong. It wasn't like an animal scurrying around. It was spaced out. Step, pause, step. Dylan tried to brush it off, saying it was probably a deer, but none of us bought it. We sat there listening. The fire crackled softly, and that's when I noticed the woods were dead silent. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Eventually we heard nothing else. and we forced ourselves to laugh it off, even though none of us felt like laughing. We turned in not long after that. Now, here's where it gets worse. On the third night, we couldn't shake the weird vibe. It was like this low-grade tension all day. We didn't talk about it, but you could feel it. That night, we built the fire bigger, like it would somehow keep whatever that was away. Around midnight, I woke up. At first, I didn't know why. I was just suddenly awake, heart pounding. I lay there listening, trying to figure out what had pulled me out of sleep. Then I heard it. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Footsteps. Not close, but not far either. Just beyond where the firelight would have reached if it were still burning. Slow, deliberate steps. Not the random rustle of an animal. Someone walking. I stayed frozen, holding my breath, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But it kept going. A few steps, then silence, then more steps, circling the tents. I could hear Dylan's breathing change in the tent next to mine. He was awake too. I wanted to whisper, to say something, but I was too scared to even move. The steps got closer. I thought about unzipping my tent to look out, but the idea of someone, or something, standing there in the dark, just outside, made my chest tighten. I had this image in my head of a face staring back at me, inches away. Then the footsteps stopped. I waited, straining to hear anything, but it was just dead silent again. I don't know how long I lay there, maybe an hour, maybe more. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I must have drifted off. When I woke up, the sun was coming through the thin nylon of my tent. For a few seconds, I thought maybe I dreamed it. But when I got out, I saw Dylan and Chris were already up, both looking like they hadn't slept at all. We didn't say much, just packed up our stuff in record time. As we were taking down the tents, Chris stopped and pointed at the ground. Footprints, not ours. They circled our tents, clear as day, deep impressions in the dirt. Barefoot. Who the hell walks barefoot in the woods in the middle of the night? We hiked back to the car without saying much. None of us wanted to admit how freaked out we were. The ranger at the checkpoint seemed surprised when we pulled up to leave so early. "Everything okay? You boys were paid through tonight." We mumbled something about work commitments and bad weather coming. He looked at us strangely, then at the clear blue sky overhead. "If you say so," he replied, then leaned in closer. "Just between us, though, you're the third group this month to leave early from that site. Something spook you boys?" We glanced at each other, and Chris finally spoke up. "Just footprints, around our tents, barefoot ones." The ranger's face went still. He straightened up, no longer casual. "You didn't see anyone, though? No one approached you?" We shook our heads. He sighed, scratching his beard. "Might be nothing. Probably is. But I'm gonna send someone to check it out." He paused, then added, "The woods can play tricks on your mind. Shadows move differently out there." But as we drove away, I caught him speaking urgently into his radio, and I knew he wasn't dismissing our story. Something was out there in those woods, something that walked barefoot around sleeping campers, something that the rangers might already know about. We never went back to that state park. We never camped together again, to be honest. Something about that experience broke whatever enjoyment we had in it. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment at night, I hear the floorboards creak. Just normal house settling sounds. But for a split second, my brain transforms it into that slow, deliberate footstep sound. And I'm right back there, frozen in my tent, waiting for whatever it was to find me. And I wonder if, someday, it will. I've been a security guard for about 5 years now. It's not as exciting as people think. No high-speed chases, no epic confrontations, mostly just long hours of walking empty hallways, staring at security monitors, and trying to keep myself awake. But there was this one night that I'll never forget. I still think about it sometimes when I'm alone, and it makes my skin crawl. It was a Friday night shift at this mid-sized office building in downtown Ravenwood. You know the type. Glass entrance, a couple of floors with cubicles, some conference rooms, break areas, that sort of thing. The company that leased the space was some tech startup. Most people cleared out by 6 o'clock p.m., but there was always the occasional workaholic burning the midnight oil. That night, it was quiet. Just me, my usual rounds, and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Around 11:30 p.m., I was in the control room, feet up on the desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, half watching the grainy security feeds. That's when I noticed something odd on one of the exterior cameras. A man was standing just outside the main entrance. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, about 10 feet from the door, not moving. His face was partially hidden under a hoodie, hands buried in his jacket pockets. At first I thought maybe he was waiting for someone, an Uber or a coworker still inside. But minutes passed, and he didn't budge, just standing there, staring straight ahead. I watched him for a bit longer, trying to rationalize it. Maybe he was just taking a smoke break, though I didn't see any cigarette. I switched to different camera angles to see if I could get a better look, but it didn't help much. He was just there, motionless. Something felt off. After about 10 minutes of this, I decided to do a quick walk downstairs to see if he needed help, or to tell him to move along if he was loitering. As I walked toward the lobby, I kept glancing at the monitors from the other cameras. He hadn't moved an inch. When I got to the glass doors, I could see him now, standing under the dim glow of the streetlight. His face was still shadowed, but there was this weird vibe about him. You know how sometimes you just feel when someone's not right? Like your brain picks up on something subtle that you can't quite explain. I opened the door just a crack, enough to talk through. "You good? Are you waiting for someone?" No response. He didn't even flinch, just kept standing there, staring. Not at me, but at the building. His eyes were dark and sunken, like he hadn't slept in days. I felt this tightness in my chest, like my body was reacting before my brain could process why. "Hey," I said again, louder this time. Nothing. I didn't want to step outside. Something told me not to. Instead, I locked the door, backed away slowly, and went straight back to the control room. When I checked the monitors again, he was gone. No sign of him anywhere. I flipped through every camera, nothing. There's no way he could have moved that fast without being caught on at least one other angle. I even checked the parking lot feed. Empty. That should have been the end of it. Just some weird dude, right? But about 30 minutes later, around midnight, I saw something else on one of the upper floor cameras. There was movement. The office should have been empty. Everyone clocks out early on Fridays, but there was a figure walking down the hallway. My first thought was maybe someone stayed late without signing out, which wasn't unheard of. But then I realized it was him. Same hoodie, same slouched posture. But how the hell did he get in? The doors were locked. I locked them. I stared at the monitor, my heart pounding now. He wasn't moving like someone who belonged there. No rush, no hesitation, just slow, deliberate steps, like he knew exactly where he was going. I grabbed my flashlight and radio. Not that the radio would have helped much. I was the only guard on duty. My mind raced through the possibilities. Maybe he was an employee I didn't recognize. Maybe I missed him in my last round. I took the stairs 2 at a time, trying to stay quiet. When I reached the floor where I'd seen him, the hallway was empty. I could hear the faint hum of office equipment and the buzz of vending machines down the hall, but no footsteps, no sound of doors opening or closing. I checked every office, every break room. Nothing. Then I saw it. A side door near the emergency exit, slightly ajar. That door had an alarm if opened without a key card, but there'd been no alert. I stepped closer, pushing it open with the end of my flashlight. The stairwell beyond was empty, but taped to the wall just beside the door was a small strip of black electrical tape covering the door latch. That's how he got in. Kept the door from locking shut. Probably slipped in while I was distracted by him outside. At that point, I wasn't trying to be a hero. I called the cops. They showed up fast and cleared the building with me, but he was gone. Just vanished. No sign of forced entry, and nothing was stolen. The only weird thing they found was a set of footprints leading to the maintenance room, a place with no cameras inside, but he wasn't there. The cops said he was probably a squatter or someone trying to steal equipment. Maybe. But that didn't explain how he knew exactly where to go, how to avoid most of the cameras, or why he was just standing outside for so long, like he was waiting for something, or someone. The building installed better security after that, more cameras, stricter protocols. But I still think about that guy sometimes. Wonder what he was doing there. Wonder if he was waiting for me to come outside. Sometimes, when I'm doing my rounds in empty buildings, I'll catch a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye. A shadow, a movement, something that doesn't belong. And for just a split second, I'm back there, staring through that glass door at a figure who shouldn't be there, feeling that primal, inexplicable warning in my gut. Don't go outside. Don't let him in. The thing is, I'm not sure I didn't let him in anyway.